So we're just going to get to it, and in order to, I sort of created a PowerPoint presentation using cardboard, which is actually this is one of the few venues that I could actually get away with that. Normally they expect you to be all incredibly digitized, but I actually found it really fun to just go using pieces of cardboard, using a Sharpie in order to think through what I wanted to talk about, and also just to connect to the feeling of actually presenting. So the first thing that is really important, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with 5 elements that actually keep us separate from the sacred world. And based on those elements, we're going to see how the seeds of each one of those allow us to enter into a more sacred model of how we might work in the world. So the first thing that we need to consider here is ignorance. And ignorance is at the center of all the problems in the Buddhist mandala, in the Buddhist cosmology. And the real ignorance, this isn't sort of a stupidity or a sense of lack of awareness or knowledge. What it really means is that we are ignorance that the ignorance that happens in human beings is that we think that we're actually separate from the world when we're not. We have a sense that somehow, for whatever reason, that we're sort of over here and the world's out there. And if we look at this a little bit further, we recognize that, actually we're connected all the time. We're connected through our breath. We're connected through our conversations with other people. At an event like this, we're connected just with this incredible environment and all the work that's gone into it, as well as the beauty of the natural landforms here. So through all our senses, through our thoughts, and through our spirit, we're always connected. So this is the fundamental issue that we need to overcome, the sense of being disconnected. The next one is based on that sense of disconnect, is that we have one of the stances that we take is a stance of aggression, that we feel we need to protect ourselves from the outside world. And this creates a sense of feeling further separated from the world. When we're aggressive, it doesn't mean we're out like lashing out at a person. All it means is that we are taking a point of view where we're stepping back from the world. And if somebody comes our way, we may attack, and sometimes we just set up a wall. So this is another thing that we need to overcome in order to work in the sacred world. Opposite of aggression is craving. And craving is basically our sense of that we're lacking something and that we need to get something outside ourselves. And, I notice when I go through these events here where when I come in here to a place like in a bottle, I have a lot of expectations usually. And then when I come into the environment, sometimes I'm finding that those expectations being met and sometimes not. So I feel like I'm looking for something sometimes, and I feel myself being pulled out into the world. So craving is just the opposite of what we do when we're having a stance of aggression. We feel ourselves being pulled outwards, but it's sort of a fiendish kind of feel to it, like we're not quite getting our fix. And this is also sort of an antithesis to the sacred world. Now, the next thing that we do, this is the 4th element, is we take on a stance of pride. And pride is essentially the sense that we have something more than somebody else, so that we got something better than somebody else. Like, that this thing that I just bought is going to make me look so much cooler than that dude over there. That kind of thing. It's a sense that you're comparing yourself to others, and you're having the stance that I have something better than somebody else. So you can see that we're out of the sacred world in this aspect because we're not actually recognizing that there's an inherent connection with that individual that we're comparing ourselves with. And then finally, in these list of 5 elements, we have envy. And envy is just the opposite of pride. Pride is basically envy is basically the idea that we are lacking something. We're on the other side of the fence now, where we see the thing that dude bought and it's way cooler than what we have, and we want it. So we have a feeling of like, you know, shoot, I'm just not quite measuring up. And it's interesting because that sense of envy can be, you know, when you're in that state of jealousy, it feels really bad. It's one of my least favorite emotions. And actually, when I take a step back and I find myself in the realm of jealousy, it's a great teacher, okay? And we'll see why in just a moment. So when we take all those elements and we start to see where we stand in the big scheme of things, we start to get something like this. And this is basically a mandala. And a mandala is the idea that there's a center, which is most important, and a fringe where things are less influential than they were before. So in the mandala principle of confusion, we have ignorance in the beginning, because that sense of separation is what drives everything. Okay? It's that sense of just being not quite there, and feeling some sort of angst and not feeling quite so good. And then you can see how these things start to get arranged. One interesting thing about this is that if you notice along this line, the craving, ignorance, and aggression, we share those traits with all other sentient beings. Anybody that has a consciousness basically has, I shouldn't say a consciousness, but has sentience, has a sense of feeling and a sense of, some sense of self, reacts on the level of craving, ignorance, and aggression. I was talking to my stepmom recently, and she's into something called equine therapy, which is basically working with horses. And when you work with horses, you get to get a sense of that they react to you in three very elemental ways. They're either ignoring you, they're either wanting to be with you more, or they're showing aggression. And if you're a horse whisperer, that's what you actually learn to work with. You learn to work with those animals on those three basic levels. If we go in the vertical realm, we can see that these things are actually almost exclusively human traits. Because we have conscious self-awareness as human beings, we can actually start to have a version of who we are, and then think of a version of who that other person is. And that's what sets up the realm of envy and pride. You know, again, if we feel that we have something more than the other person, we may take on a stance of pride. And if we have a sense that we don't have as much as that other person, we have a sense of jealousy. So again, this is the confused mandala, but it's said within the Vajrayana that basically all the seeds of confusion lead to wisdom. So it's important that we don't throw this stuff away. We don't say, hey, I'm not gonna get rid of my cravings entirely, my aggression, my pride, and my envy. No, it's actually the key is to just notice that it's happening, and then start to see what seeds of wisdom start to come out of that. And when we start to do that, that's when the beginnings of this sacred world start to take place. So before we go any further, what I want to do is just do something a little bit experiential, okay? I want you to just close your eyes for a moment and just imagine that you are totally separate from the world. Feel that sense of a contraction. Feel that sense of isolation. Feel that sense of desperation and loneliness that accompanies the idea that you are actually separate from the world. I know when I envision the world that way, I feel sadness, I feel a pain in my gut, I feel a sense of nervousness, like how am I going to get what I need as an individual to work out in the world? How am I going to get what I need? Okay? Now go ahead and open your eyes and shake that off. Shake it off. We don't need that anymore. Inadvertently, we come to these environments sometimes with that in mind, like what am I going to get out of LIB? And I think the message of lightning in a bottle is that actually what are you going to give? What are you going to bring? You know, this also comes out of the philosophy of Burning Man. How am I going to bring the best of what's in me in order to contribute to that environment and to make that environment way bigger than it was without me. You know what I'm saying? And that's actually the beauty of these festivals. And I think that this is the message that a place like this really brings out into the world. Okay.